Right, so now we're going to talk about chemical reactions and chemical changes as opposed to physical changes. Um, the, what actually happens during a chemical change is that something changes into something else. The composition changes, whereas a physical change, things would stay the same, they keep their identity. Now, what we mean by changing composition is that you're rearranging the atoms. You're not creating new atoms or having atoms disappear into nothing. You're just rearranging. That's a very important distinction. The ability of a substance to undergo chemical change is called a chemical property, and we can use this to identify substances. So later on in the year, I will give you an unknown, and based upon how that unknown chemical reacts with other chemicals that you do know, you will be able to identify it, and it's pretty neat. So we talked about this already. The composition changes. And remember, by composition change, I mean rearrangement. We're not creating or destroying matter. In a physical change, that doesn't happen. Okay, the composition stays the same. So if you had a mixture of iron and sulfur and use a magnet to get the iron out, well, now it's not a mixture anymore. You separated them, but you didn't change the identity of anything. Whereas if you heat iron and sulfur together, you're going to make iron sulfide, and that did change the composition. You've made something new. That's a chemical change. Chemical changes are also called chemical reactions. The starting materials, they're called reactants. The ending materials are called products. The reactants appear on the left side of the chemical equation. The products appear on the right side, and then the arrow basically is saying, hey, this reacts. So hopefully you already knew that. But so what are 4 clues that a chemical change is taking place? Well, the first one is transfer of energy. So if you feel something and excuse me, all of a sudden it gets cold or hot, you probably have a chemical change, chemical reaction taking place. If something changes color, then you also probably have a chemical change. If something produces a gas, how do you tell if it's producing a gas? Well, look for bubbles. If you see bubbles, you probably have a chemical reaction on your hands. And then the last one, with a new word maybe to some of you, the formation of a precipitate. This precipitate, that's basically when you make a solid from 2 liquids, 2 solutions. A picture of this is right here. It's pretty nifty. You see the pipette dropping a clear liquid into another clear liquid, but you're making this white solid. It's like a powder. And we'll do lots of that later in the year as well. So, precipitate's a solid that forms in cells out of a liquid. Clues to chemical changes are practical applications. So, for instance, I already showed eggs a couple slides back, but when you make eggs, you are changing the composition. You can't reverse it, right? If you want to identify a chemical change, a lot of times it's something happens that you can't undo. You can't go back to the way it was. Once you cook your eggs, you can't uncook them. We also use it for pH and many other things. We'll discuss lots of those as time goes on. All right, so that's it. Sorry if that was a whirlwind, but I hope that helps, and I will come back with the next section.